Thousands of years ago in Ethiopia's Omo Valley, a river wound like a silver serpent through the land. The Omo River. It fed the earth, and it fed all who lived by its pulse. In the village of Boko, life followed a rhythm set by the sun. Men herded cattle, carved spears, and decided the fate of their homes. Women worked the fields, bore children, and bent their backs until the sun slipped behind the acacia trees. Among them was a woman named Ayen. Her laughter once echoed louder than the river's rush, but she was wed to Daro, a powerful hunter. When he paid 10 cattle to her father, the elders declared, "Now she belongs to him." And just like that, Ayen became property. Her days started before the herd stirred, her hands working a heavy stone to grind grain. She fetched water in gourds that bruised her shoulders. And when she dared to speak without being asked, Daro's hand was a swift reminder to stay silent. In those days, it was said that women's tears fed the Omo's current. But Ayen didn't just cry into the river, she began to listen to it. As she fetched water, she watched how the current carried everything, even heavy, fallen logs, without breaking. She began to whisper to it, her words a secret between her and the water. "If you can move mountains, perhaps I can move hearts." By the firelight, the old women told her stories from a forgotten time, a time when women spoke with the spirits, before men claimed that power for themselves. One night, fueled by these memories, Ayen gathered the women. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "If the spirits once listened to us," she said, "they have not forgotten." They began small. Ayen taught the younger women to speak together, not apart. When one woman was beaten, the others would gather before her hut and sing mourning songs, not for a death, but for an injustice. Their voices spread through the valley like wind through dry grass. At first the men just laughed, but their laughter died when the women stopped working. They refused to cook, to grind grain, to fetch water. The village fell silent. The cattle bleated with hunger. The fields began to dry, and the elders called an urgent meeting. Daro's voice boomed with anger. "They have forgotten their place." But then the oldest woman, Nari, stood up. Her voice was frail but carried the weight of generations. "No, my son, we have remembered ours." A heavy silence fell over the council, heavier than the Omo's flood. From that day on, things began to change. The men still held power, but the women now had voices that could not be silenced. The river carried their courage downstream, and long after Ayen's bones turned to dust, her name was spoken with reverence, the woman who made the Omo remember. A generation later, Ayen's granddaughter, Lale, was born into a world where the echoes of that defiance still flowed like the river itself. When Lale was born, her mother whispered into her ear, "You come from women who spoke to rivers." Lale grew up under the same sun that had burned her grandmother's back. The men still met beneath the baobab tree, and the women still tilled the fields. But now, when they sang, their voices were not whispers. The women had formed something new, the circle of dust. At dusk, mothers, daughters, and grandmothers met to share stories and truths that once hid in the shadows. Lale would listen as the old women told of the day the work stopped. "The ground itself stopped breathing that day," one said. "Even the sky waited." Lale's eyes blazed. "Then why do men still hold the council alone?" The old woman smiled, toothless but wise. "Because rivers carve stone slowly, child." One year the dry season was brutal. The Omo ran low, the cattle began to die, and the men grew desperate. The elders decided the women must walk farther past the border hills to find water. But Lale refused. "The river still flows beneath our feet," she insisted. "Dig, and it will answer." No one believed her, so she gathered 5 women, and they dug with their bare hands through the cracked clay until their fingers bled. For 3 nights, nothing. But on the 4th night, the ground wept. A thin trickle at first, then a burst of clear, life-giving water. The men called it a miracle. Lale called it memory. Word of her deed spread along the Omo. The circle of dust grew, and soon women began to speak at the councils, not as servants, but as keepers of the earth's secrets. Daro's own grandson, now a chief, once asked Lale, "What do women want?" She answered simply, "The same thing the river wants, to flow freely." Years later, Lale was buried beside Ayen, near the bend where the Omo turned red at sunset. Generations apart, their spirits were said to make the river sing on the wind. And in the villages that followed, when a girl was born, the elders whispered the blessing Ayen once gave her daughter. "May the river remember you." Centuries passed. The Omo still flowed, carrying the songs of those who had walked its banks. Villages became towns, kingdoms rose and fell, and the people of the valley learned to weave old spirits with new ways. In a modern town near Old Boko, a young woman named Nia walked toward a small schoolhouse. Motorcycles and radios buzzed around her, but beneath the hum of progress, the river still whispered. Her grandmother had told her the stories of Ayen, who made the Omo remember, and Lale, who found water in the dust. To most, they were just folk tales. To Nia, they were instructions. Nia was the first woman from her family to go to university. She studied history and hydrology, learning how rivers move and how people can shape water without silencing it. When she learned that government plans threatened to divert the Omo for industry, drying out the valley, Nia returned home. She gathered the elders and the women, not with rebellion, but with words, maps, and memory. At a public meeting, men from the city spoke of progress and money. When it was Nia's turn, she stood, her voice quiet but clear. "This river fed our mothers before your machines were ever born. If you block it, you stop their song." The hall fell silent. The journalists there wrote that her voice sounded older than the valley itself. Her words, rooted in generations of wisdom, resonated far beyond that room. Within months, the project changed course. The river was protected. That evening, Nia walked to the water's edge. She stepped into the cool current and saw her reflection, and in it, she imagined two other women, one with a grinding stone, another with hands calloused from digging. Ayen, Lale. She bowed her head. "You spoke through me today." The water rippled, as if in answer. Today, the women of the Omo Valley hold a festival of the river each year. Young girls paint blue lines on their arms, symbols of the river's flow, and they tell the story of three women: Ayen, who found courage; Lale, who found water; and Nia, who found her voice. And as the drums fade into the night, the elders whisper what the valley has always known: the river remembers its daughters. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through time. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that connect our past to our present. We'll see you next time.